All right, everybody, what's going on? Welcome to Locked On NHL with Adam Denker from Locked On Lightning. I'm Chris Maselli from Locked On Avalanche. We have a power ranking for you guys today, and that is head coaches. We're going to get to the top 10 head coaches based on the voting of us NHL hosts, not just Adam and I. I always have to throw that out there across the whole network. A couple retirements happening a couple days ago in the NHL. We'll talk about those and maybe some big storylines that we're kind of looking forward to maybe materializing as the season goes along. Training camps have opened. It's a good time to be a hockey fan because the season is right around the corner. Get excited. Let's do this.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody. There we go. How are you doing, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On NHL podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Chris Maselli from Locked On Avalanche. With me, as always, on Thursday, Mr. Adam Denker from Locked On Lightning, and it is a power ranking that we will get to, as I mentioned in the opening. Some voting on head coaches, and it's an interesting one. There's some on there that I didn't expect to be on there, so we will discuss that. But first things first, thank you for making this your first listen of the day. That is always appreciated. And the first thing that we wanted to get to today was those retirements that happened the other day in the NHL. Some big names hanging up the skates, hanging up the gloves, and what happens next for these couple guys, namely Zdeno Chara and PK Subban. I think the Chara one, that was just bound to happen sooner or later. The guy's played, 87 years in the league. You knew that was going to come around sometime. With Subban, you maybe thought there was a team that just might take a chance on him, and I think he just held out as long as he possibly could. Maybe there was a team out there that was willing to throw out, minimum dollars for him, but it was probably likely not a team that was competitive. And in the end, he was like, I know I have a good thing wherever I want to go in a booth, because he's really good at doing that.
Yeah.
So I think he just figured I might as well go do that route.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed, not just because I think everybody loves to make fun of the way PK Subban just back skates on all the time. But
Yeah.
if you remember, Chris, he was my biggest prediction, I think. Whether it be late last season or going into this season, that the Edmonton Oilers would eventually sign him at some point or pick him up, and a little disappointed now.
Saying that. Really? I don't remember you saying that.
Really?
No. Well, I mean, we throw out a lot of predictions.
We do.
When you and I get together.
Here.
So
Usually, when we throw out our predictions, it's fast, it's loose, it's reckless, just like PK Subban's playing style. And, but I really thought he had a lot more in the tank for him. I don't think.
What is he, 34 years old or something?
Yeah,
like that?
The guy is still, by NHL standards, young, and he didn't really play a whole ton last year with the Devils, so kind of figured the guy doesn't really have a lot of miles left on it, out of a lot of miles to really go. But I mean, listen, he's smart. He knows that now he doesn't need to go out there and get beat up on the ice. He could just be in the booth, talk about fashion. Is my favorite thing about PK Subban, I'll always remember, is the big Dudley Do-Right hats that he wore into the building. But yeah, him, Keith Yandel, Zdeno Chara. I think at this point, like, if he didn't retire 3 years ago, I thought he was going to be one of those guys that's going to play till he's 50 or until the league just doesn't want him anymore. But not surprised with Chara, though, because I was telling you before we jumped on, I was actually in the building for his last game against the Bolts. Steven Stamkos hat trick, by the way. I just want to throw that out there.
Oh,
and the guy couldn't move. I mean, when he was on the ice, played very little that night. And then obviously Keith Yandel, who surprised. I think that was the one that surprised me the most, was probably Yandel, just because he always seems like a guy that someone always is in need of that player who's going to play every night and who's going to be solid.
I think the funny thing about Yandel is like, obviously he had, that Iron Man
Yeah.
streak going, which just ended
Yeah.
like towards the end of last season. So then he decides to hang it up, months later. I think that's the weird thing. When you have guys that do that, and then when the streak ends, they kind of just fall back into normal playing time. Where
Yeah.
if they're gonna take a night off, I'm talking about like baseball and stuff like that. When Cal Ripken Jr. was doing it, like after his streak was over, it's not like he rarely played, but he was taking days off all the time. It's like,
Yeah.
all right, I don't need to do this again. But he
Right.
played a number of seasons after his streak was over. And it was surprising for Yandel to say, like, all right, the streak is over. That's really all I had to go on. and
Yeah.
and I'm just gonna hang it up. But PK Subban did surprise me because
Yeah.
he is younger, I think I'm right with 33, 34. You still can get a number of seasons out of him for him to do it this late. Training camp opening up clearly states that he was trying to find somebody to latch onto, but it was
Yeah.
either a bottom feeding team and likely money, because
Yeah.
what he was making last year, he was going to make nowhere near that, and that might have been a hit to his pride to make maybe league minimum
Yeah.
or close to it. And he was just like, yeah, no, I'm not going to go out there for that much. I can be nice and cozy in a studio somewhere. So all three guys, I think, obviously very good careers for all of them. Chara, Hall of Famer, no doubt. Subban, I don't know. I mean, I don't really think
No.
he's a Hall of Famer. Um, and Yandel, while that streak is, an all-time streak, I can't put you in the Hall of Fame just because of that. You got to have some stats too.
Yeah. One cup win between the three of those guys too, as well. Which
Wow.
pretty much shocked me, considering Yandel, it almost seems, has played everywhere. It always seems as though as every
Yeah.
year we're talking about him being on a different team, and there was a while there, I believe, once he left Arizona and he went to the Rangers, and then you expect him to kind of be in the thick of it. He was with Florida for a couple of years; they were pretty good as well. Kind of figured a guy like that, kind of
Hmm.
a guy who's hung around for a while, kind of like the best comparison I could think of right now is like a Patrick Marleau, Joe Thornton kind of player, always trying to get that last elusive cup. Kind of figured he was going to get that, but and surprised also as well, like I said, because everybody loves him, and the fact that he couldn't find a team, and maybe there's other reasons as to why he retired. Maybe he just doesn't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Did you see that? I'm sure you have that graphic that's going around about now that Chara is retired. There's
yes.
nobody left in the league that has lost to the Maple Leafs in the first round. I mean, you see that and you laugh, but that's incredible when you really think about that and
Yeah.
how long the guy's been in the league. That's insane, and it's kind of embarrassing if
I
you
think
are Toronto.
I think that'll take. I think when the Hall of Fame votes start pouring in, I think that will be held against Chara, and that would be
Yeah,
the thing that will keep him
you
from
think?
getting into the Hall.
Oh yeah, that one thing. Like, yeah, you lost to
Listen, you were the
Toronto in the
cat.
first round.
Yeah, you were the captain of a Stanley Cup team. You played for a Big Six team for many years, but listen, it's we can't look the other way on this. You lost to Toronto in the
Yeah,
first round,
it's holding you
so
out. Can't do it. I mean,
and you played for the Islanders twice.
yeah, very true. So good careers. Yeah. So and all on the same day too, which
Yeah,
was like retirement day for some reason in the NHL. But then Nathan McKinnon decided to sign his contract, so that made me feel a lot better. All right, let's hear from Bet Online, and then Adam and I are going to look at some of the storylines that we're kind of looking forward to heading into this season. But first, we have betonline.net. It's your number one source for football betting this season. You can find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game that you find. As always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all of your sport wagering information, live betting, and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite games and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. It's betonline.net. It's where the game starts. All right, sir. So there's always storylines that are kind of like floating out there that kind of just keep having a story of their own as the season goes on. Are there any out there for you that you're kind of just keeping a side eye on uh, as the season progresses? Because for me, I think the biggest one is going to be, what are the Hawks going to do with Taves and Kane? You'd have to think that their time is coming to an end, and come trade deadline, they likely will flip them for some assets and trade and draft picks and whatever the case may be. But or do you think it could happen earlier? If there's another team out there that maybe is not starting as hot as they want, or maybe just slow getting out of the gate, put a package together, let's jumpstart something and do a little bit earlier? Or do you think it goes to the trade deadline?
I don't know. That's a hard question to ask. It's not very often do we see trades early on in the NHL season. I mean, then again, for all we know, one of these top teams who are looking and also have the capital to pull off such a trade. Um, I don't see anybody making a trade that early on. I think this is going to be a deadline deal. I actually would go a step further, and I really think that we will see Kane 100% move.
Mm-hmm.
I think really what it comes down to is what team, if he approves of whatever team wants him the most, and if that's where he wants to play for the remainder of the season, and what kind of deal that the Blackhawks will be getting. I don't think Taves gets moved. I think Taves is perfectly fine with being in Chicago. He's been the captain there, which seems like forever. He's won 3 cups there. I think that he's one of those guys that he was there during the bad times. He built it up to what it was, and I think that he still thinks that they could turn it around. Um, um,
Really?
but yeah,
Okay.
he just strikes me as one of those people that he's willing, regardless of where he is in his NHL career, he's willing to take a few more bad years in order to be the captain at the top of a NHL team once again. But what teams are at the top of your list, especially
Mm-hmm.
for Kane? Because I think that's the player obviously everybody is watching. What teams are at the top of your list, actually the favorites to get Patrick Kane? Because
I don't
I
know.
from everything I see, it seems like
Yeah.
the Rangers are a slam dunk for this.
You keep hearing that. You keep hearing the Rangers getting thrown around, and I don't know who's a favorite. I don't think there's any real favorite right now. I think it's more of fit. Like, who's he fit well with? And it could be the Rangers. Yeah, that would make some sense. But I just kind of feel like a guy like him will go to a team you're not expecting. Like a team that is not necessarily at the top of the standings, but pushing for a playoff spot. And maybe they got one of those teams that like makes that decision. Do we go for it, or do we just, pump the brakes and, you know, if we make the playoffs, cool. If not, that's fine too. Because even if we get into the playoffs, we know that we're not going to do much damage. So there's always those teams that are like on like towing that line, and you get teams that go both ways on that. You get teams that say like let's go for it. We can get a guy like him. Yeah, if we can make it to the playoffs, we can do something.
Right.
And who are those kind of like middle of the road teams right now? I mean, it's the beginning of the season, you have no idea who it is, but could a team like the Kings do something? You know what I
I
mean?
don't know.
The way
Yeah.
that they're building it is the right way. So I don't know if they'd want to go blow that up and get rid of a lot of like prospects, but it's always possible. Yeah, a team like the Rangers, maybe a team like the Islanders ponies up and throw something out there. You have no idea. At this stage of the season, because a puck hasn't dropped yet, it's really wide open. And I think that's why you wait, because you see how the standings play out and where teams fall. And then it could be a team at the top of the standings that says, let's get better. or that middle of the road team that says, let's get a guy like him and make a serious push.
So you're saying Vegas is going to get Kane?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
You know what?
Yeah.
As much as I think that it's eventually going to be the Rangers, I don't know. I think it would be irresponsible for us right now, especially after everything that we have seen over the last couple of years, Chris,
You're right. You have no idea.
To not count out Vegas or a team like that, a team who is willing to just not be able to pay its players in order to get the top talent.
And that was a team that I have written down here.
Yeah.
That's a storyline to me is Vegas. Missing the playoffs last year is unacceptable for them. But they couldn't really do much to improve themselves. Are they kind of banking on, having Jack Eichel healthy for a full season is all we need to really correct this? Not having him, only having him a few months last year, we were put in a tough spot, and now going into this season we'll be fine? Or is it like, no, you guys are still screwed. You are very top heavy. Your goalie situation is a nightmare right now. What do you think? What do you think Vegas does?
I mean, they have to figure out their cap situation, and
no, they don't. and they won't. And they won't. Because they're stubborn.
Chris, you can't be biased when it comes to Vegas, and it's very well documented about how much you hate, and at the same time enjoy the failures of the Vegas Golden Knights.
Here's the thing with Vegas, like, they're the first team that I dislike. Like you dislike teams because of specific players.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't like the fan base. This is like the first team I dislike because of the front office. How often do you dislike a team because of like who's in charge? I'm not talking head coach. I'm talking GM and president. That's what annoys me about this. I thought about that the other day. I'm like, I've never disliked a team because of the suits. Congratulations, Vegas. Anyway, you were saying, I interrupted you. Yeah.
I don't know. Off the top of my head, I don't know how a deal like this would even happen, where Chicago would come out on the other end of that thinking that they won. Because listen, Vegas has a good system, but how much is too much because I think that's what the conversation is going to be had over the next couple of months is Patrick Kane. Yeah, he's still one of the best players, I believe, in the league, and he has that ability to kind of carry a team at certain points throughout the season. But he's not 25 anymore. So really, the question is, how much is too much, and how much is underpaying for Patrick Kane at this point in his career? Because listen, I don't think if you're the worst team in the league, but you somehow want to make a deal for Patrick Kane, is the first overall pick overpaying for him at this point in his career? I think that's the point you kind of have to start at. Is he worth the first overall pick? And then you kind of work your way down.
No.
So
no, he's not. Definitely not. I will definitely be watching Vegas, begrudgingly, but I will be watching Vegas.
I mean, at this point, just for the sake of hearing you scream and yell, I just want him to go to a Western Conference team. That's all I want at this point.
I'm not against stuff like that, man. Like I like playing against like best of the best, so I wouldn't be against that.
So Patrick Kane in Nashville.
We're gonna move on. Yeah. So how much do you think people are going to be watching the Florida Panthers and the Calgary Flames and comparing like how their seasons are going? And if it's not working out for Florida, I mean, they have a good team, but just for whatever reason, if they're not, last year they were just plowing through everybody. And, I think people in the fan base were expecting that to happen again going into the season, and then they make a massive deal. So do you think that there's going to be a lot of comparisons between those two teams? And if Florida is not performing like they should and Calgary is outperforming them, is there going to be some maybe buyer's remorse on the side of the Florida Panthers and the fan base?
That's an interesting question because I was talking about this on my show as well when I was doing division foe, roundups and looking at
Mm-hmm.
them and how things have changed. And I don't, I can't sit here and definitively say that Florida Panthers won that deal. I mean, yeah, you got Matthew Tkachuk, and yeah, he's a very talented player. But last year was his first 100-point season, and you gave up a
Mm-hmm.
guy. What you gave up in return was one good quality player who's, in my opinion, I think a top 3 forward, and
Yeah,
then the other is top 3 in the MVP voting. So right now, if gun to my head, no, I don't think they won that trade. I mean, really, this all hinges on what Matthew Tkachuk does this season. If he
yeah,
comes out and has a rather pedestrian season, then I think a lot of Panthers fans are going to be pissed. I think that
absolutely.
anything short of a MVP season for this guy is going to be a failure when
I
we're looking
mean,
at that trade.
you gave up your best player, and you let go of your coach, who
Yeah.
won Coach of the Year, and so you made some real ballsy moves. If they don't work out, you're gonna have a very unhappy fan base. So
I think I will say though, I think hiring Paul Maurice was a phenomenal move. I think it
it's
was
a
a
good
no-brainer
move,
move
yeah.
as well. Yeah.
Um, but time will tell. And then finally, the Seattle Kraken, year 2. I mean, nobody's expecting him to like move mountains or anything like that, but just out of sheer, you have guys that are going to be on this team for 2 years in a row now, should just be better. What's a good season for them? Just an improvement in points, or should you feel like, okay, like we got that season out of our system, so let's at least maybe push for a wild card spot? Is that out of the realm of possibility?
I don't know. I would have said going, if last year was year 2 for this team, I would have said, yeah, like wild card is definitely within reach with the roster you have. But the emergence, if you want to call it that, of what the Kings and the Ducks did last year. I mean, the West is going to be insane this year. We so much is talked about the Metropolitan Division and the Eastern Conference as a whole, but I think the West is going to be just off the charts this year, especially with San Jose continuing to get slightly better year by year, and then obviously you have you guys in Colorado, you have the Blues, you have the
Hmm.
Oilers, you have a very good handful of teams to where you know you look at Seattle. I don't know if a wild card spot is even within grasp. I think, yeah, overall performance is better. I mean, really, last year we spoke about on the show where it was certain times this team was pathetic,
Yeah.
and I have faith. If I'm looking at their roster right now, I have faith in what they could potentially accomplish this year. You got Oliver Borkstrand, Andre Burakovsky, Matty
Hmm.
Beniers. Really good foundation there with a
Right.
lot of other players around him. Former Lightning player Yanni Gord, of course, got to throw that out. Um, the goaltending situation, I think, is going to be an interesting conversation. You have Drieger, Grubauer, and Martin Jones there. So, what's going to happen there in goal? And I really
Yeah.
think in the end, if you could get solid goaltending from those 3 guys down the stretch, I think maybe they could be a fence team. But I mean, we're still. I mean, it could go either way, Chris. I mean, they could come out and
Yeah.
play well, or they could come out and overperform, or they could completely, crap the bed like we saw them last year.
Yeah. I mean, I think an improvement is in the cards. Um, but like you said, they have a really good foundation with some really good young players, so they need to materialize. But do they have enough like firepower? They're not going to outscore teams. You know what I mean? Like they have some good offensive weapons, but not top to bottom. So I at least I think they'll be more of a enjoyable team to watch because they were not last year. So, and I think in that aspect, yeah, that's an improvement. You're
Well,
an expansion team. You're making baby steps.
they had 60 points last year.
Mm.
What's if you're a Kraken fan, what is your your number in points that you would be satisfied without a playoff appearance that this was a successful season. Mine, maybe my expectations are a little high. I would say 75,
That's
70.
exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. So that's, you know, I think, and that's doable.
Yeah.
So that's 60 last year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's only what, 7 more wins, 7.5 more wins.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could ask for that easily. So,
yeah.
All right. There's always some storylines that we can talk to and maybe talk about. Maybe next week we'll even add a couple more. But for now, we're going to get to our final topic of the day, and that is the power ranking of the coaches across the NHL. We have the top 10 for you, and we're going to put them up on the screen. Let me organize this. If you are watching on YouTube, there they are. If you are listening in your car or at home, I'll read the top 10 for you. Number 10, Peter Laviolette. Number 9, Bruce Boudreau. Number 8, Bruce Cassidy. Number 7, Craig Berube. Number 6, Gerard Gallant. Number 5, Mike Sullivan. Number 4, Rod Brindamore. Number 3, Jared Bednar. Number 2, Daryl Suter. And number 1, Mr. Tampa Bay Lightning, John Cooper. Any issues with this, sir? I'm going to think that you do not, at least at the number 1 spot. But for the rest, any that you surprised should be that are surprised that are on here, and you feel like they should not be. Any people that you think should be?
I think Paul Maurice should be in the conversation.
Yeah.
Spoke about him a little bit before. I mean, the guy, one of my favorite coaches in the league, had a fantastic run with Winnipeg there. And now he is in a way better situation. I think, as the season progresses, obviously these odds will change. We will see him at least in the top 10. Laviolette, I think, is going to drop out. I think the Capitals are pretty much, I think they're going to drop out of a playoff contention spot this year, possibly. Who knows? Maybe they'll sneak into it. But my point of view with this is that I think Cooper should have at least won once out of the last 2 years. And obviously he didn't. But I think this year, I think his chances are very good with that, just because the team isn't the big bad Tampa Bay Lightning as what we're used to here in Tampa, seeing, coming off a Stanley Cup final loss, little bit of a shakeup in the roster, lost a couple of your top guys. I really think that the coaching is going to be a bigger part than it, it's not the old days, last couple of years, where you could just roll out Coach Point and Stamkos and, and company and say, go play hockey. And then, you rattle off 110 points. I think this is going to take some real strategic maneuvering this year for Coop. Sutter, I really like his odds. Like I said, I like we were talking before. You know what? He gets Huberdeau, and I believe Tippett was part of that trade. You get those two guys to start clicking right away in Calgary. I think a lot of people are gonna jump on the Suter Flames bandwagon real quick. Just because of if they get off to a good start, especially without Matty Tkachuk, I think I think it's going to be a story a lot of people are going to love watching.
Bruce Cassidy does not belong on this top 10 list. I'm sorry. If he was still coaching Boston, sure. If you're going to a brand new team, I think it's tough to put, even though Vegas should be, a good to decent team this year. I don't think you just automatically get thrown into a top 10 list because what are we doing? I mean, are we basing it on just the coach or what the coach has done with the team that he's currently with? There's so many factors that come into when you do power rankings. And for me, that's why I wouldn't put like Peter DeBoer anywhere near a top 10, because he's with a brand new team. Like, you don't know how they're going to do. So I think it's a little bit of a stretch to put him on here. And I like Bruce Cassidy. I really do. Like, I heard when he was going to Vegas, I just kind of like sulked in my pillow for a little while, because that's just not a matchup that I wanted to see, because I like him. And we all know how I feel about Vegas. So, but I think it's rough. We had a conversation the other day, Kyle and I, my co-host, about Bruce Boudreau being on here. Everybody loves Brucey. Like,
I mean, who doesn't? Who
you
doesn't? He's
have
the
to.
man. Bruce, there it is.
He is incredible. And if you ever had a coach opening and he was available, he would be on every single team's
Oh, yeah.
list. Like he's just, and he's a great coach and he's a likable guy. And we were kind of talking about that. It's like, okay, like how I'm saying Cassidy's brand new with his team. Bruce is fairly new with his team. So I'm okay with him being like kind of towards the bottom of a top 10. I mean, he's at number 9, but that's one that's really close just because he got there. I thought it was like mid-season when he got there, and Kyle was saying no, it was earlier than that. I don't remember
I want to say
exactly when it
I
was.
want to say it was around like March, if I'm not mistaken.
That's what I thought. On it, like, well, I thought maybe it was a little bit earlier than that. Kyle thought it was like in between like Thanksgiving and Christmas. I'm like, man, I don't think so.
Kyle
I
doesn't
don't
know
know
what time of the year it is anyway.
He's on Alabama time.
But let me ask you this question. So,
yeah,
what is it going to have to take, in your opinion, for Bruce Boudreau to win the Jack Adams? I mean, I think it would have to be top 3 in the West, right? I mean,
like a guaranteed playoff spot.
Guaranteed playoff spot. I think one of the best teams in the West, especially with the names that you have on this list, because it's you have a lot of storylines and a lot of, I think Gallant, and that goes back. I think Gallant's going to go up in that list. I think the Rangers are set to have a huge year this year. Like I stated before, Paul Maurice, I think he's gonna shoot up this list not too far into the season. I think your boy Jared Bednar, I think he's always in the mix now, especially with what they did last year. He won last year, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Won the Jack Adams?
Yes.
No.
Who was?
That's the thing in Avalanche circles is the guy never gets nominated. Who the heck won it last year? I don't remember. Let me see. Who was it last year? I don't know. Oh,
I've
Adam has left the bill. I can hear you, but
let me see if I can fix it. No,
it's no big deal. Who won it last year? Oh, Suter won it last year. Daryl Suter won it last year. So, I don't know where Adam. Can you hear me, Adam, or no?
I can hear you.
No,
I can hear you. Yeah, we're having some technical difficulties right now, I guess.
Yeah,
but
Adam's. We can't hear. And I think a cat has entered the building too. So
yeah.
So I don't know. I don't have the rest of the list, so I don't know where certain guys are, but we'll see how this changes from this year to next year. So I think it'll be an interesting one, and that's the thing with the Jack Adams is it's always up for debate. And people, that's an award specifically that someone that you think, like if we threw out 3 guys that we thought would be in like the final right now, it's probably not going to be those guys at the end of the year. There's always coaches that they like that kind of like flip the script as the season goes on and kind of like let them in on the final 3. So that's why I kind of like the Jack Adams, just because there's so much involved in it, and a guy that would just come out of nowhere that has a really good season, they'll throw him in the mix. So, all right. Any last words from Mr. Denker?
No. Subscribe to Locked On Lightning, _Lightning on Twitter, Locked On _Lightning on Instagram. We are previewing the Atlantic Division, how those teams stack up, how the Lightning stack up against those teams, how they stack. We just did an episode of how they stack up against the Eastern Conference. We already have a couple of Atlantic Division features out. We did one with the guys most recently from Ottawa, so go and check that one out. That was a great episode. You got anything to plug, Chris?
We got a lot of crossovers in the hopper. I know we're doing one with Tony from Locked On Vegas. Can't wait for that one. We're doing some more division ones with Jack from Locked On Blackhawks. And I think we have a Predators crossover coming up too. So kind of like staying within the division and getting those kind of getting people up to speed on what's going on with the opposition for next season. So good stuff ahead, including a brand new NHL season. So that's going to wrap it up for today, everybody. So thank you for tuning in and making it your first listen of the day. That is always appreciated. He's Mr. Adam Denker from Locked On Lightning. I'm Chris Maselli from Locked On Avalanche. That'll wrap it up for today's episode. Enjoy the weekend. We'll see you guys next week.